Welcome to the Partners Meeting, a weekly recap of Mad Men Season 7 Part 2, right here on the Bushell Review. My name is Aaron Harting, and once again, I'm joined today by senior partner Joseph.
How are you,
Joseph?
I'm on lower.
Head of account Sean.
Hi.
And creative director Katie.
Yes!
She got the cool job.
You got the gold job.
Oh.
Last week, Roger and Ted got mustaches, Joan and Peggy got sexually harassed, and Don got some alleyway action from Dirty Diana. But this week, we're talking about new business. We just finished watching episode 9. What did everyone think?
Well, it felt like quite the jump. I was like, where are we in this whole story?
Yeah, so you're wondering how much time had passed since
it's
the previous episode and where we are now?
Yeah, it was just like, things just kept moving though, and then it got kind of caught into the episode rather than just like feeling confused a little bit. The whole Diana thing's crazy. We'll probably talk a lot about that.
I think the familiarity between Don and Diana just makes it seem like it's so much different than it was in the last episode. So it's more confusing and more like, what's going on?
But see, I feel like that familiarity, to me, it didn't seem like there was a jump. To me, that's kind of Don Draper.
Yeah.
I mean, how often has he been with a girl? When he was with Nev Campbell on the plane coming back from California, I mean, they could have fallen in love right there. He's just kind of got that way about him. But I thought that it was interesting because this girl seems different from all the other girls that he's been with.
Well, I was going to say, I thought this woman was like the female version of Don in a way. He finally found someone who is also like a shell of a person. Someone who had been through a lot, someone who, as we quickly discovered, lies a lot.
And is afraid of their feelings.
Right, afraid of their feelings. And I was like, is this what Don needs? Like, does he need someone who's a lot like him?
But are the motivations between the two seem different? The reason why one lies to me seems different from the reason why the other lies.
But we don't know much about Diana. The only things we really know are the things she's like feeding us.
She's from Racine, Wisconsin.
Yeah. First lies about having. I mean, she says, well, "I have one kid."
Well, first she says there's no kids.
No kids.
Right. Then the next
one kid, 2 kids, and maybe next episode she'll have 3, 4, 5. Who knows?
So you're saying she's like what's that, like a religious family that has a reality show, the Duggarts or something? Like she's going to be the
19 kids. Time to take advantage of tax season. 19 kids.
She's from Racine. When she said that, I definitely...
Well, she didn't say West Dallas.
No, but Racine... I mean, look, there are plenty of people from Racine that say they're from Milwaukee. That's not true for listeners. If anyone says they're from Milwaukee, ask them where. And if they have another name that's not Milwaukee, they're not from Milwaukee.
Wow.
But
Right.
serial killers come from... I thought she was a serial killer. Like I said that it was... She seems strange to me.
Up until the penultimate scene... Was anyone else thinking, like, maybe these two are going to stay together? I mean, it sort of seemed to be hinting at that, or that possibility. And it wasn't until, obviously, the end where she says, you need to go because when I'm around you and I don't feel about leaving my daughter, but that's why you need to go because I want to feel the feeling of leaving my daughter.
Did you have the feeling that they might stay together?
Up until that point.
Really?
Because, she spent the night, and I don't know, Don seemed... I mean, it's Don, though.
I think, you have to realize that he hasn't told her anything that we've seen, right? How much does she actually know of him? It hasn't really been shown.
She knows that he has a lot of women's coats in his closet. She does know that.
A lot of money.
That he has
kids.
And money.
Great apartment.
That
he's vain.
He's vain. She also, by the way, great little cameo, Arnold and Sylvia Rosen.
Ooh.
Arnold, had a couple of drinks there, maybe.
Arnold's
more than just
still completely oblivious to all the affairing his wife did on him.
But certainly knows that Don is very sexually active because he says the line, would you take the whole restaurant home? And then later when he says, we should get together to play squash or something, he was like, if you have the energy for it, warn out from taking this lady home. But I really enjoyed how then, can we call her Dirty Diana, by the way?
Sure.
I don't know. I don't feel comfortable.
I'm just kidding. I like how she turns to him. It's more Dirty Don, to be honest.
Well, like,
and then says, "So
Dirty duo.
how many women have you had in this elevator, or how many times?"
he doesn't answer. He does not answer.
Yeah, he doesn't.
Yeah.
He doesn't because.
So
Here's the question: what is the number?
You actually looked it up. Did you actually look it up?
No. It's just speculation.
Well, okay, let's see. How long has he lived in the apartment?
Yeah, how long has he lived in the apartment? So Sylvia, yes, because I think you did that at least.
How many
once.
off-screen romances has he had? Like that we don't know about?
I would say there. I mean, this is speculation. I bet the number's between like 3 and 4. I bet there's been like between all the women that he's had, like the dating service that we saw in the last episode. There's probably been a handful where Don's like, I'm just going to make the move in the elevator. Why not? Because he's Don.
The thing is that I don't think that he fools around without intention. I mean, there are a couple when he has that one split between Betty and what's her face, Megan. But I mean, you think about it, the women that he hooks up with, and even this one. That's what I was thinking the whole time: is what is he getting from this woman? What is she fulfilling? What's empty hole? And then with her, vice versa, because with the wife. What's her name?
Oh, the Sylvia Rosen character.
Sylvia Rosen character. That was another one where it seemed like he needed something from her, and he was searching for what I was searching for what that was.
Sure.
So I think that he is not his MO is not to just be a floozy and sleep around. Although he does, but I think he with the women's he sleeps with, it's very intentional in that he's looking for something from them. To me, that's what it seems like.
I think sex. I think he's
Yeah.
looking for sex.
But I think that's the point of that conversation he had with Pete in the car, where he was like, Pete said to Don, like, what if you never get past the beginning again? Because that's just proving that Don can not get, I don't know.
Get to a
I like
point.
that. Get past the beginning.
Yeah.
But the thing is it's not just one night stands to me. Like you said, it's the beginning that he
just can't overcome himself enough to get through anything to see his real self. So he's just constantly like recycling his own version of himself to different women and expecting them to like come up with ways that he can be better, and he can't because he is the only one who can make himself better.
But this was, I think, Diana's thing is like she like challenges that. And that was like the weird thing where...
In what way did you think she
Well,
challenged
like
her?
when the scene where he comes over to her apartment, basically she kicks him out. And he's like, I'm taking your drink back.
Sure.
Boom. It was like right there is the time to take something away from him. And then he just like, with like sad puppy tail, walks out the door.
By the way, why did Don seem so set on going to her apartment? Because I think there were multiple times where he was like, I could go to your place, or and then that doesn't happen until right at the end. Why was Don so set on going to her place?
He wanted to see, like he said, like...
If she had a twin bed, or what?
No, like, when he got in there, he said something about how, like, I know what this is like, or something, like, I've seen this before, I know how it is.
I mean, I think that statement was like about, I've been in the hole, and I know what it's like to be poor, and like downtrodden, and he's trying to figure out like this person in a weird way, like unraveling her and trying to fit into that somehow, but she's different. You already get a sense of that she's different, and more like the relationship's going to be a lot more in depth if they continue than what was with Betty and with Megan. I mean, Betty was like the shallowest. Their marriage was super shallow, and she knew nothing of him. And then Megan, as we follow her marriage with him, we just kind of kept discovering things, and more stuff came out, and like she actually knew his like alter ego, or his real name, at
Sure.
the point. And it was now this last person maybe is the complete unraveler and like unwraps him like a present.
Well, I wrote down because I thought it was a very interesting line when Don and Pete. By the way, they should, if they ever did a spin-off, they should do a Don and Pete road trip.
Yeah,
where it's just them in a car,
a movie
going to places. But Pete says the line, which I thought was very interesting. You think you're going to begin your life over and do it right, but what if you never get past the beginning again? Is that what Don's struggling with all these women? We were just saying, he presents all these versions of himself, or the same version of himself, and sort of like he's expecting a different response, but he's not getting it.
I mean, that's like such a cryptic line, especially since this is the last season. Well, there's no new beginning on this one. It's just done after a while. So maybe it's like a Pete basically saying the series is ending now.
Right. Oh, and by the way, we finally did get a little closure on, because we were speculating, is Pete still seeing the woman? I mean, from California.
Yeah.
I mean, that sounds like that's all kind of done and dusted.
I like what Katie was saying, in that the whole time, for me, I question, will they go back to Dick Whitman? And really, who is Don Draper? And it seems like maybe by starting with a new woman each time and going through that beginning, he's looking to fill the hole of who is Don Draper. Because he's not Don Draper. He's Dick Whitman. And, I mean, this whole time he's been playing a part, but maybe he can't play it well enough to make that person real.
I'm just going to say it because it's there. Don's been filling as many holes as he can. I'm sorry. Moving on, perhaps. Arguably, the biggest, I would say, not only the biggest Stan Rizzo episode we've ever seen of Mad Men, but also the biggest Ed episode we've ever seen. Ed, the guy who was like, should I grow my hair out? That guy had like the most lines he's ever had in one episode.
That comment was so brilliant. I loved it. Just like all of a sudden he's just asking, "Oh, Peggy, should I throw my hair out?" And then it just starts the whole scene. Like,
that was
completely random. It's hilarious.
A great like sort of non sequitur to start with.
The jokes, priceless jokes throughout the whole thing. Like Roger was just amazing. I mean,
Roger was in top form.
Oh yeah. That great scene when Megan and her mom are arguing in French, and he's like, I've got to be in a meeting. And then they keep talking, I really should go, I'm late.
my favorite to sort of kick it all off was they cut to Roger in the office, and then it's like, you have a phone call from a Marine? He's like, what? Marine? Wait, I'll take it. and then he does I love, because we've seen Roger do it a few times when Roger speaks French, because he answers with a bonjour.
Yeah.
And it took me back to the episode where Megan does the Zooby Zoo, and then Roger does a little speech, and I remember it opens with him going, Je m'appelle Roger. I love when Roger speaks French. It's great.
But I think one thing about Roger is like he's serious now. He's seriously busy. You can he's stressed out. You can clearly see that him moving this organization to its new stages has like really cut his time, and he has 2 secretaries, and he's stressed, and he has to hide in Don's office, and like he doesn't know what he's doing half the time. He's just forgot. He's trying to fill that void that Bert left after he passed away, and he just being a leader, and you can tell it's kind of grinding on him, but in a weird way, it makes him more respectable the whole time, right? He's more of a power figure than I think he's appeared. Like, I feel previously he's more of a clown and a guy who drops the line and the cool guy, and now he's becoming the figurehead. Like, it's almost like he had this destined to be, and he's like filling something right now.
Do you think that they dye his hair? I was wondering that because I have been watching the first season, and it's whitish, but he's got a little pepper in there. And now it's
I don't think they do, because I've seen photos of him at sort of like promotional events for Mad Men, and his hair looks it's the same color.
Nice.
Because like I'm assuming if once the show's done taping or done filming, he would go back to what his normal hair is.
Oh,
so I think it's like that all the time.
I mean, you don't know, because they depicted a lot of time, and I thought maybe the reason why I thought that is because, like Sean said, they did seem to move him into the Bert role, so I thought they wanted to try to age him a little bit, but it seems that he's just aging by himself.
So here's a question about moving him into the Bert role. When Megan comes back to the hotel room and sees her sister, and the sister's freaking out like, "Oh, Mom's leaving, and she's leaving bad." At one point, though, she says she's left with a man in New York City. Now, this is after Roger has sort of been caught in Don's apartment and does kind of what you were saying, is like, "Oh, I need to get back to the office." Did the mom leave with Roger, or did she leave with a different man that we haven't seen before? Because doesn't the sister say, like, mom's left, she's going to leave Dad, she's left with a man who lives in New York?
I assume it's Roger.
Yeah, I assume. I guess we'll find out.
Possibly.
I liked when Megan came in. I forget what she says to Roger, but he responds, she started it.
Yeah.
She totally did.
What's great about Roger is he's so childlike when he's in trouble.
Yeah,
He just looks up and kind of smiles and just tries to think of like a clever little way to get out of things. And like, oh, I'm just a silly kind of guy.
I feel like a lot of the men in this episode were very childlike. Just like Harry, like coming on to Megan and then blaming her for it later when he talks to Donna. It's just like
to cover his
everyone
ass.
Seems so childish, even more so than before, which is amazing.
Oh, Harry though, man, I hate that dude.
Such a slimy worm.
What a sleazeball. Like, as if he couldn't get any sleazier. When he reaches out that hand and it's like,
You got to do what you have to do to
Oh.
like make it to the top. Like you have to screw your way up. Like, and I'm one of the steps, Megan. Like,
I'm the first ladder rung. Okay, I'm Harry Crane.
That's one of maybe the most profound lines, I think, in Mad Men. And I'm pretty sure it happens in the first season. And it's Roger who says it. They land a deal, and he holds up a glass, and he toasts, and he says something to the effect of, here's two boys pretending to be men.
Yeah.
And I thought, I mean, it sums up their behavior throughout the entire series.
What did we think of Rizzo's behavior? Rizzo, who we've known that he has a girlfriend.
Well, let's just maybe start with like the art. What was it? Prim? What's her art? The artist?
Pima?
Pima Ryan.
Pima Ryan, which she was just a crazy just wrench thrown into the whole system because it was confusing, like what her role she was going to play through the whole episode at first. It's like, oh, she's just going to be this one-off character who just takes pictures and then just is done. But then like, oh, I want to see your work. I want to see what you do.
In the dark room.
In the dark room.
She has
Very seductive.
Power suits on?
Yeah, power suits.
By the way, when did Annie Hall come out? What year was that? Was it later? Okay, because I feel like she influenced Diane Keaton's character or the other way around.
Is she a real person?
I think it's just a reference.
No, she's not a real person though, right? No.
Pima?
No.
Okay, good.
No, I don't think so.
I was like, is this a like person? They never like actually have real people in Mad Men.
Well, the only one I can think of is the Conrad Hilton character.
Oh yeah.
I think that's the only one that we've seen that was
And they
an
base...
actual.
Yeah, so she must be based on some kind of artist who was
Like Amy
obviously
Leibovitz or something?
bisexual. Like obviously bisexual at this point, but she's asking Rizzo, "Oh, I want to see your work," and she seems to be trying to like read people and hit their tender spots, and trying to like. It's weird because Peggy's like sees it as, oh, she just wants to get more money and a job, and that's why she was like coming on to everybody, and he's like seeing her as like, oh, she's like cool and she's into my stuff and we did this thing and
she's like an artist that I respect,
right.
and I like how
my work's all horrible these days. Ooh, and I have to improve it, so I'm going to take naked pictures of this nurse person who we have never seen.
Elaine, not Ellen, not Ellen.
But wait, has she ever been in the previous episode? I don't remember.
No, but they haven't mentioned her for a while.
They've alluded, Rizzo, because there have been a couple of times I think where you see Peggy call Rizzo on the phone, and then like you see a woman sort of like walk by because his girlfriend's over. We've kind of known of her. I don't think we've ever seen her. She's never spoken any dialogue. What do we think about Rizzo now? I mean, Rizzo joining the. By the way, it's like, are we going to run out of characters that cheat on their wives or girlfriends? No, it's Mad Men. No. We'll do one more. We're going to do one more.
Here's a question that I've always had. In that, when I watch the show, and when a lot of people watch the show, they say, "Wow, this is so realistic. This is what it was like in the '60s." And I remember the first season. I called my grandma and I described a scene where a woman was being oppressed or put down, and I said, "Grandma, this is what happened. Is that what it was like?" And she's like, "Oh yeah." What? I said, "How do you get angry?" She's like, "That's just how it was." And I was like, "That's terrible." And it made me wonder, though, as the series went on. I think it was when Pete started to have an affair. I thought, is there anyone on the show that hasn't had an affair? And if so, how many of our grandparents were cheaters?
Sure.
I mean,
the only one I can really think of off the top of my head is Ken Cosgrove.
Oh.
Yeah.
I think that's the only character where you can say that person is sort of morally upright in a general sense.
His wife is cool, though. She's like, be an artist, write stuff.
Alex Mack. The Secret World of Alex Mack.
Well, and what's his face? The guy who cut his nipple off.
Ginsburg?
He's
androgynous
a little bit.
Yeah, and we never really saw him with a partner.
His father always wanted him to get married or have a girlfriend. And
I mean, we remember that memorable date where he was with that woman, and within like 2 minutes, he was like, "By the way, I'm a virgin."
That was a really good
Thank
bit.
you.
You had a little head bobble.
Thank you.
With that mustache.
By the way, for those, obviously you can't see if you're listening to the podcast, but I'm sporting a Roger, maybe Ted-esque mustache right now.
And kind of a 70s shirt.
In honor of the
The
premiere
70s
episode.
flower power shirt.
Thank you.
Yeah, I like it.
So not only did we see Arnold and Sylvia Rosen, we also saw Francis and Betty. Betty, going to go for the master's degree. I really enjoyed Don's line where he said, that should be fascinating for everyone involved. that was a great Don.
Oh, man.
Just being a dick.
You could tell how much he hated being in that house. And, like, he hated seeing Henry and just how he interacts with Betty. It's just like, and Betty, I mean, like, what was she wearing?
But he's jealous of it, too,
Oh,
to a certain
sure.
extent.
Because
like, at the end, when he was walking away and he, like, looks back at their, like, so-called perfect family, he's just, he looks
there's longing.
remorseful, yeah.
Yeah, there's
like,
longing in his eyes.
I was going to ask what you all thought that look was, because to me, I thought it was in response to, what's the guy's name?
Henry?
I thought it was in response to Henry saying, I'm going to have myself a chocolate shake. I thought it was a look of disgust, of like, you're disgusting. That's what I thought it was.
Oh, okay.
That's what I picked up. I was like, oh, he's disgusting.
It was all about the shape.
Henry's drinking Don's milkshake.
But no, I think it's that look where you see like your ex with someone else, and you're like, I'm better than them. Like, I am cooler than them.
Yeah.
They are boring. I didn't feel these personally or anything. But you're with my former partner who
was wearing a ridiculous outfit.
Yeah, no, that's what I was gonna say. Yeah, I was wanted to say this Betty, how she was dressed and her hair and everything.
But she explained that they had just come back from some like highfalutin
meeting with the dean of a college or something.
Yeah.
It's like, but that's what you wear. It's like, wow. She's trying to like. It seemed like she's trying really hard to be hip and still. But sometimes you have to realize that just do what feels right. Don't just try to force it.
What do we make of Betty? She's going to get her master's degree in psychology, which is interesting because remember Don. It was having her psychologist,
Dr. Edna. Sally's, right?
No, the like from the first season, because remember, he's like, Betty, you should go to therapy. And then her therapist would call Don on the phone and be like, well, your wife said this and this today, and blah, blah, blah. So it's sort of interesting that now Betty is going to school for that. Or is about to go to school for that.
Was there any hints in the previous seasons of that, she was leaning towards, or is it just? I feel like this one came out of the blue that she was gonna get her master's degree. We do get the sense that she's bored.
I thought we had a little sense. I think it was in the first batch of 7 episodes where they're doing some sort of like neighborhood fundraiser and people are over. And she makes some comments about the Vietnam War. And then Henry kind of reprimands her later, like, hey, you weren't supposed to say that. Like, you're not following the talking points memo.
Right.
And she's like, well, I don't know. But, like, I have my own opinions, too. I read, too. Yeah. So she's certainly someone who, it's sort of like she's showing, let's say, early signs of what maybe a Peggy would have shown in season 1. It's just she's not in an office where it's clear how you can move up.
And her friend Francine, when they were having lunch once, and Francine was talking about, maybe we talked about this last time, but talked about having a job and being out of the house, and
the travel
Betty
agent,
seemed
right?
jealous. She's late to jump on the bandwagon, and but that's what she wants. She wants to do what other people are doing.
Well, because she did the housewife thing,
yeah.
And we all remember how that turned out.
And I wonder too. I feel like my parents, they grew up in that time, and I feel like it still was a little gray in terms of what women felt their role was. I mean, I'm sure that Betty was in the time where it's like you were a housewife, that's what you did. So I think it's interesting to see a transition, because I would say that it's probably in the 70s and then further on where women start to say, that's not all I have to do. Whereas my grandma, housewife, that was it. She went to college for I think
Baking.
a year. No,
I'm just-
she went to college for a year at actually, I think it was the University of Wisconsin. And even if that's wrong, let's just say that so it sounds impressive. And then she dropped out and was a housewife because that was just something you did. So maybe Betty is realizing that.
I
hey,
think it has to do with that she's shallow and that she wants the attention for like getting a new thing in life. Like
You think
it's
so?
a new part of her
Well, she
new
does.
phase in her life. So she like wants people to notice that she's like doing something.
Like an accessory.
And
Yeah.
she certainly says it like that when she says it to Don.
Yeah.
You know, instead of saying, I was at this thing. It was like, I was at this thing because I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
And this, I'm going to go to school in the fall.
Like,
and it's
look
like,
at
what do you
me.
think
Look at
about
how
that?
good I
That
am.
is pretty sure.
Don's like, I make chocolate shakes. Okay? That's what I do. I'm done.
Going back to that chocolate shake thing, I think that it was I have a hankering for chocolate shakes right now. That's why. But I think it was symbolic because Don makes his kids chocolate shakes, and they said, "Will you have one with us?" And he says, "No, I'll drink some out of yours." And he does, and he leaves. And then the first thing Henry does is say, "I'll have a chocolate shake." And when Don looked back, it felt like he was looking in through a window of like, this isn't even mine anymore because.
Yeah.
Right, because Henry, in many ways, is more of a dad to those kids than Don is.
Ever was. Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about last week. We speculated, gosh, are we going to see Megan again? Well, we definitely saw a lot of Megan. I don't think, had we ever been introduced to the sister's character before? I mean, we'd certainly seen the mother and the father because there was some horrible like dinner that they all went to once
That was
back in the
a
day.
great scene. Great scene.
Yes, it was. But you certainly got a little sense of the family dynamic and maybe kind of explaining who Megan is as a character because it sounds like her mom's constantly complaining and the sister's constantly also complaining. And you can see why Megan would just feel a little fed up with these people and say, like, why are you bringing me down? But then she herself is sort of struggling because it's like, I'm a young person. I made this decision to be with this man who told me all these things, and I thought he would be all these things, but clearly he's not.
But that was something I had trouble with because, like you said, the mother and the sister seem to be, the mother certainly seems to be self-centered and a complainer. And when Megan sat down with Don and she says to him, "You lied to me, you ruined my life," I had this thought, and tell me if this is I'm being myopic, but it's like, Megan, when you met Don, you were a secretary, and since you've met him, you've had a successful acting career. You could still have a successful acting career. I mean, speaking as an actor, when she goes to Harry Crane and she's freaking out because she hasn't gotten parts, every actor goes through that all the time. I mean, if I
So wait, how many people have you slept with to get parts?
I don't sleep with people. I just am saying that I go a week without getting a call, and I'm freaking out the way that she is. So if she went 3 months, which I've gone a whole year and no one's called me,
I think
you
though,
freak out.
I think that complaining was not about how Don had, let's say, ruined her career. Because Don did sort of inadvertently, because he said, "You need to leave your soap and like let's move out to California," and then that never happened.
Sure.
But I don't think she was complaining to him about that.
No.
Kind of that you had ruined my acting career. It was just sort of like, you've ruined my youth a little bit. I mean, I thought I was going to be with someone for the rest of my life, and that's clearly not going to happen.
But that's the thing, though, is that being with Don, to me, didn't necessarily hurt her in that, yes, she did get divorced, but then she's very nonchalant when she talks to her sister, or is it her mother and her sister, where she says, this is America. People get divorced. I mean, it's not that big of a deal. So for her to then go back and say, "You've ruined my life," I feel like that was a little. I didn't get it.
I think it has to do with the coming of the age of feminism. I think that's what it has to do with. Like, all of these women in 1970 were like, I don't have to be married. I don't have to listen to everything that my husband's saying. I can talk back to him. I can say what I want, and he's going to listen because he has to. And I think that's more of what it has to do, and I think a lot of other characters in this episode kind of presented it that way too. Just even the artist, like Pima, being able to like seduce Rizzo, I think that's a good example too. I don't know.
Or I mean the part Peggy where Peggy rejects Pima. She's just like,
Yeah.
I'm going to put my power forward right now and say, nope, you're not going to sleep with me and take advantage of me. And I am the I'm basically the person who's going to control everything in this situation. I am your work is mine, actually, and I get to choose what we put out as our advertisement. She just totally shuts her down in all her fronts in that scene, and then proceeds to take Rizzo down another peg.
Yeah.
Just because he got taken advantage of, and then Peggy was like, "Nope, she was just using you."
And she did it to me too. So.
But I was stronger than you, and I said no.
Yeah.
Right.
I guess what I'm saying is that Megan to me never seemed helpless. Whereas if Betty had said, "You ruined my life," that I guess could make sense. But she could say to Don in the way lovers do, "Hey, you screwed this up," and I would agree that he did. But to say that he ruined her life, I mean, to me, she seems like a very strong woman. She made some sacrifices for him, and they were big ones, but she seems too adaptable. She seems too powerful and too strong to make that claim, because it's like, Megan, you're fine. You're going to be all right. Like, I guess that's what threw me off, is that she made it sound like her life was in shambles, and to me, it just seemed like she was in a lull time, and that she would bounce back just as strong.
But you have to think about, go from the end of season 6, where Don says, "We were happy together in California. Let's move out to California." She quits her job, moves to California. Don says, "Put on the brakes. Sorry, I'm going to let Ted move out there." Then when she's out there, Don's only kind of coming back because, let's say, her agent's calling him saying, like, "You need to deal with her." Remember, there's that one scene where she's like, "Oh, so you didn't come back to surprise me. You just came back because my agent was complaining about me." It's not like he was even going out there to spend time with her. But he's the one who sent her out there under the premise that they would be together.
Yeah.
So you can see why she would be really upset with him. Although I will say this.
Of course.
I will say this. I do want to take issue with Megan on one thing. She called Don an aging, sloppy, selfish liar. Don is not sloppy. He's very well. He looks very sharp. You can call him aging. You can call him selfish, and he's definitely a liar. But Don is a put-together guy.
But if you think about sloppy in terms of sloppy seconds, I mean, that guy's in like sloppy 34th, so he's just a puddle.
I almost think that one of the only reasons that Megan said that was because of what she just saw between Roger and her mother. Like, she's just pissed, and she will blame Don for that whole thing between Roger and her mother just because that's the only way they all know each other.
Right. Like, her mother would have never cheated on her father with Roger had Don never even been introduced into her life.
Like you said last week, he's a Godzilla that just wreaks havoc. Yeah. But so now that's interesting, too, because I wanted to ask, in this episode, it seemed like Don was a lot more malleable to the wishes and desires of the women. Where every time when Harry came into his office, "Hey, I want to talk to you about Megan," he really seemed, instead of getting upset about it, he really seemed, in almost a defeated way, to be very, like I said, malleable. Where it's like,
he's like, "She's not my wife. Like, I don't care."
Or when
like,
he writes her the check, or this new woman, Diane. I don't know. It's a very different Don than I feel like we've seen. He seems softer, at least in this episode.
Was that the influence of Diana? Was that because it was putting him in a mindset where he was like, I'm sort of hitting it off with this person, and for once I'm finding someone who's shattered like me.
But was it when he was divorcing Betty? He was like in that vulnerable state again, right? I mean, that's what's really showing is his vulnerability and his like dependencies. Or I need someone to fill that hollow hole again.
See, but that's what made this one strange, where I do agree that he was looking for something with this new woman, but he genuinely seemed to admit fault with Megan.
Yeah.
I mean, there was nothing about that was like, "I'm going to write you a check and buy you off," or "I've got this new piece of tail that I want to get back to." To me, it really seemed like he said, "You know what? You're right. I screwed up." And
it's probably because he really liked her, and he didn't really like Betty.
But I mean,
he did seem like he liked Megan more than he liked Betty. Granted, we never saw Don at the beginning when he first met Betty, and I was kind of shocked when that moment even happened too, because I always thought there was that one season, I think it was maybe season 5, where Don never cheated on Megan. That whole season, and you were like, did Don change? Like, is he a good guy now? Because it's sometimes people do change.
But how often, too, does he admit that he's wrong?
Not often.
And so I feel like
it's usually just to Peggy in a room very quietly.
After
don't tell anyone I'm sorry I was wrong.
After they drank quite a bit.
Right.
But yeah, it was weird to see him openly without any he didn't defend himself at all. He just admitted that he was wrong. That was a pretty extraordinary thing.
Yeah.
So you had mentioned Don cutting the check to Megan. I looked up using an inflation calculator. Now we can all in our heads imagine what's $500. We can all think about that and like what you would spend it on, and how much would it go towards rent or what you would spend on food. But how much was $500 in 1970? Because Don says, I mean, what does he say? Are the New York Jets moving you? Like, what's going on?
Right.
So, what is everyone's guess? $500 in 1970. What would that be worth today?
$500. Let's see. I'll tell you this. Let's go by this. My dad told me that he went to the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, a pretty, well prestigious university, and he spent $300 or $475 for an entire year, including books. So to me, I would say that $500 would probably be in the ballpark of $8,000 to $10,000. That's what I'm going to say. Remember, a head of lettuce is a nickel. A head of lettuce is a nickel.
By the way, can I ask, are we sponsored by the UW system? That's the second reference we've had today.
What?
You mentioned your grandma and you gave like a
That's right.
UW Madison.
Travel, Wisconsin.
Katie, $500?
I'm going to say $4,500.
$4,500, okay.
Oh, is this a Price is Right thing?
I'm gonna
Sean?
say $2,000.
$2,000.
Say 2001? No.
$500 in 1970 would be approximately just over $3,000 today.
Yeah, that's what.
And then, if no one has a calculator handy, $1 million in 1970 would be over $6 million.
That's crazy.
So, I mean, just imagine cutting a check for that today.
That's winning Who Wants to Be a Millionaire 6 times.
That is. By the way, according to someone who I know who is fluent, not just highly proficient, but fluent in French, she told me a nitpick that she has is apparently when Megan speaks French, she speaks it with a French accent as opposed to the actresses who play the mother and the sister who speak with a Quebec accent.
Yeah,
Really?
So this is what I'm saying. Should Matthew Weiner be chastised for not being accurate?
But I thought that actress...
I thought that guy was supposed to be all about accuracy.
I thought
and she's speaking with a French accent, not a Quebec accent.
I thought she is French-Canadian.
She is, but apparently where she was raised or however she learned French, she's learned it with a French accent.
Oh.
So
You want another little bit of nitpicking?
I'd love it.
Okay, as an actor, there's this point where Stan runs his hands through that stupid, luscious head of hair that he's got. When he's talking to Peggy in the office and he's frustrated and he brings his hand down and he brings it down on one of her pencils on her desk and he kind of gives it this look of, what the hell? That was absolutely obviously unscripted, but it was great that they kept that in because I feel like they probably would have edited that out. And it was great to watch the actor be like, what did I just hit my hand on? I'm still acting.
Stay in the moment. Stay in the moment.
I'm upset because I hit my hand with the pencil.
What do we make of Don's skills as a private investigator? I mean, he calls up Nick. What was the last? I wrote it down here. Constantinopolis. Meredith had a hard time even saying it.
Yeah.
But, Don tracking down Diana, found the new restaurant that she's at. I mean, Don, could he have a second career as a PI?
He's got the Bulldog Drummond look.
Why was the problem with this Nick guy? He just giving her away like that? That's a breach of privacy. Isn't it?
I'm assuming he's the owner of the diner. And I'm assuming, even though we never saw it, there was probably a little juice that was involved to kind of sweeten the deal. Kind of like, hey, you tell me where she is. Maybe I cut you a check, too.
Yeah, I think part of it was just back at that time. It wasn't that hard to just be like, oh, where'd your employee go? I'm creeping on her. And the dude was like, here, no problem. I'm going to just run my diner. And that's how he found her in her stupid work uniform, which was atrocious. What was that? Is she working at what looked like a steakhouse?
Yeah.
And behind her, I noticed this.
It looked like it was A1 colored.
Yeah. Well, okay, here's a dress. Yeah. The chef behind. I noticed the chef behind, and like he's working in like with a plexiglass to be watched as he like does whatever he's doing, and he has metal on. Did you notice that he had like a medal?
I did not notice that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it must be a fancy-ish restaurant, but
Maybe.
It's just sad now that the only way that like Don can like meet someone new and like be like a ladies' man is to like call up their employer and be like, "Where is she? I'm gonna follow her, and I already paid for her once, so." Like.
And then the guy's like, "Well, if you
depressing.
paid for her, I guess I gotta."
It's just depressing.
It was the
And, like,
1970s.
Yeah.
well, I mean, why is he so adamant about going after her? I mean, part of it, I think, is like, oh, she's been through so much. She has that like thing about her that makes her like mysterious, makes her dark. You know, someone who's isn't just like a ditzy stewardess. I mean, who we saw in the last episode.
No
right?
disrespect to Trisha. I'm sure she's a lovely girl.
As a stewardess. But the whole pursuit thing seems to come because he senses that she's greater, or like there's something about her that's worth going after in a way. Because I feel like he's the type of person to not pursue if there wasn't a good reason to.
What is the reason? That's, I guess, what confounded me a little bit with this Diana woman. Where with Megan, I mean, she was exotic, she was young, she was hot. Betty, of course, we don't see how they first get together, but she talks about it a little bit. But with this woman, I don't get, as I said, what is he getting out of it? What is he trying to get from her? Because that, to me, I mean, when she's sitting in the boy's room in his apartment, he's comforting her, and he's known her for how long? And I don't know, they just seem very intimate, and I don't know how they get there. So to me, it's like he was trying to connect with her in some way, but I couldn't figure out what that was.
She did reveal something that was very personal, though, that she had a daughter who had died of the flu.
Right.
And I think immediately Don goes into, I'm so sorry to hear that. I don't know what to do. So, but obviously there's a bond there because anytime you share something like that with another person, it's intimate in a way.
But after, the second, third night? I mean, I remember one night a girl told me she loved me, and I was like, I don't know your name. This is, I am going to make a swift exit right now. You know what I mean? I mean...
Be honest, it wasn't a girl, it was an agent that took you home. Come on, we all know it.
It's how I got the big commercial.
Is it fair to say we won't see Diana again? Was this the last time we saw Diana? Is she done, or is she going to come back?
I think she's coming back, just based on... I mean, he leaves, but there's going to be some kind of, like, one more interaction to really just cut it off, or we're going to sail with her to the end of the season.
Yeah, I mean, it won't be the first time that Don has pursued a woman after she said, you need to stop.
That is true.
No, I think they're done. Because she basically said, we may feel similarly, we may be of similar, like a similar person, where we're like discontent with life and we find strength in each other for like being depressed. But I'm different because I always want to feel this way. And I don't want to feel differently with you.
Yeah, you bring up a very good point.
I agree with you for exactly the reason what you just said. She said, I like to channel that feeling. And in a way, I think Don kind of likes to, too. It's just maybe he hasn't...
No, he totally runs away from it, I think.
You don't think so?
Man,
I mean, with the alcoholism and...
the alcoholism and all the, like, sleeping around, yeah, that's running, I
But
think.
I mean, that's... The alcoholism, I think, is embracing, though, just horrible thoughts sometimes. Not always, but sometimes.
But maybe it's putting Band-Aids on,
Maybe.
like Sean said. Maybe trying to dam up the emotions that might bring. I mean, that's why a lot of people drink
That is true.
excessive amounts.
I don't think we'll see her again. I think she's done. I'd be really surprised if she comes back in another episode.
Do you, Katie, find Don Draper attractive?
Yes, of course.
Now, he's got a great-looking face, but when he takes off his shirt, does he not
He's
look like...
gotten a little flabby in the last
He looks
few
like my
seasons.
7-year-old grandpa.
Your 7-year-old grandpa?
70. I mean,
I was going to say, he
passed
must have
away.
looked horrible at
He's-
70 if
He's
he's
passed
70
away,
was
but like,
looking...
the last time I saw him, I was like, Don, you've got this
Yeah.
great head on top of 68, 70-year-old's body.
I don't agree.
You know what I mean?
Would you describe it as flabby, or is it just he's a man who's 40 years
Yeah.
old? I mean, I think he's in shape. It's just he doesn't have a six-pack.
Well,
yeah.
I rewatched like a few of the first couple episodes. I'm like, and then I compared. Oh my god, he's really lost some stuff there, but whatever. You are like in your 40s, so.
I mean, and do some Googling. He's still got it where it counts.
Yeah.
If you know what I'm saying, ladies.
Oh wow. Okay.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
I've heard the story.
John Ham's ham. You know what I'm talking
yeah.
about.
John Ham's ham.
His thighs, obviously.
Those ham hocks.
Nut cracking thighs.
Maybe a last thought about the episode. The episode opens with, and we talked about it earlier, Don making the chocolate shake, and then he has that scene where he sort of like looks, and he sees a husband, a wife, children. They seem to be happy. Then the last scene is Don standing alone in an empty room. Those are the bookends. That's how we start and end the episode. Is that maybe a metaphor for how the season and then ultimately the series will end? Don alone without anything?
I called it. I called it. I feel like that's where they're going with it. I think they're going to take him to the brink, and they're going to break him, and we'll get to watch.
He's going to become shuffling along the streets of New York, just
Mumbling to himself.
Yeah.
With that walker that we always saw years in the future.
I mean, he's being stripped away slowly. Maybe that was what it was, because everything is starting to unravel, and everything is starting to get taken away from him. And maybe going back to Diana, it just seems maybe that was the first, like that was a huge thing. He's all his power is going away, and that was one of the things. It's just her willingness to be with him is gone, and now his apartment's gone, and like what else is going to be taken away from his kids? Maybe like Henry's like, oh, I'm going to be president now. See you guys. We're moving to the White House, or what? I mean, they've mentioned like he had weird aspirations like that, right?
I think he wanted to be attorney general or something with Rockefeller.
I think
Or
Betty
Rocky.
talked about being like, didn't she talk about being like first lady?
Yeah, it was a weird like thing, about being some political force moving to DC or something. And I bet that's next. He's going to lose his kids, and I could just imagine like the last episode, like I feel like we should see Sally sometime soon, and like kind of what she's been going through, and maybe maybe we keep predicting what's going to happen, but they'll just be, because I think we'll see her being beat down. I think Sally.
How old is Sally now? Is she like 16, 17? I mean, she's not a senior yet at the boarding school, is she?
No, but yeah, she's close to that like adolescent, becoming an adult. I mean, that's what we've seen is her transform into an adult, and I feel like on the next few episodes must have her in it, and we'll probably see the shit she's been going through and like what kind of life she's having, and I bet the last episode will be the two of them just sitting together and just be like, yeah, well, I've been through a lot of stuff, and I don't want you to do it too, so here's my life story.
By the way, speaking of
In a
things...
southern accent.
Actually, I'm not from...
I'm Kevin Spacey, pretending to be a man from Georgia. Speaking of... This was a prediction that I forgot to mention last week. Things that we might see throughout the rest of the season. Do you think we'll ever see... And I think the character's name was Glen. Sally's little boyfriend, who's actually the son of Matthew Weiner.
I just learned that.
Wait,
that's Matthew Weiner's son.
Get out!
That's the little nepotism, but That's...
Well, he did.
But you can do that when you create Mad Men. You can be like, I'm going to make my son a character just cause.
He did a lot better job than Coppola's kid.
Are you talking about Godfather 3?
Oh, she
yes,
she ruined it.
I think there's a lot of elements that ruined Godfather 3, but that is for a different podcast.
That's for Joseph's Podfather.
It's like a episode of Two Truths and a Lie. Two Truths, 1 and 2 Godfathers are great. The third one sucks. I wish it never existed.
Do we think we'll see Glenn though? Is Glenn going to show up just one last time? Because I think the last time we saw him, he like snuck in some pot at Sally's boarding school, and then he had that friend who I can't remember what.
Let's not forget Glen. Glen is a creep.
Oh, he's a total creep. He's a total creep. Remember,
I want your mom's hair.
The thing is like, is he a creep still? I mean, let's be real and say that as young kids, I'm sure that we all did things that we didn't realize were as weird as they were when we got older. I mean,
Totally.
creepy things. Like, for instance, my mother dressed me up in a suit and dressed my cousin up in, like, a sort of wedding-ish gown, and we paraded around when we were 5, like we were married. That's really weird. But when we were 5, we were like, this is great.
And that was just like a Tuesday afternoon.
It was a
you did
Tuesday
that.
afternoon.
But that was also your mother, not you doing this, like...
I would say this, though. Glen was creepy, but I think the last few times that we've seen him, seems like he's kind of grown up a little bit. Seems more like a regular dude.
That's what I mean.
And he's very protective of Sally. He's really loyal, right?
I hope he goes...
Well, they always had sort of
weird...
there was like a brother-sister thing when they were younger, but then, remember, they sort of took that trip where they went to sort of like the National Museum of whatever. Yeah, but there seemed to be something a little more romantic then, because they were a little bit older then, and that's what kids would do maybe at that age. Or you'd start having those feelings.
Yeah. I just think that he was creepy when he was a kid, but now he's fine. He's a normal person.
I want to see Glen. I want to see him one more time.
So now
I want Glen closure.
Here's a question, though, is that do you think, is that what you want with a lot of the characters? Do you want closure on their separate stories? And do you think that's something they're going to do? Because to me, I don't think that they have the time.
Well, here's the thing. I don't think they'll do that, and I think Mad Men ultimately represents real life in that. Obviously, it's a little bit different in the modern age because you can stay connected with people so many ways, let's say through social media. But in the 1960s and 1970, you might have someone in your life, and then they move away, and then you never see them again, and you never hear from them again. And I think that's what's happened with some characters. Mm-hmm. Some characters have moved on. Let's say the first one that comes to mind is, let's say, Dr. Faye. Dr. Faye, who had a relationship with Don, and they seemed like a good fit, but then it didn't work out, and then he decided to get married to Megan. She exited his life, and, I mean, why else would we see her again? Unless it was some weird coincidence where they run into each other, but even then that would seem forced. So I think there's a lot of characters that we won't see again.
Well, yeah.
I like Glen's chances, though, because he's Matthew Weiner's son. That's why I like Glen's chances.
What I'm saying is there's so many primary... Dr. Faye was a...
Sal, too.
Yeah, she was an appearance. I mean, I would say that Sal's got a better chance, but you look at so many primary characters with Betty, with Megan, you can go down the list, and it's just like, you can't wrap up all those stories.
Maybe that's why they brought Sylvia in this episode, to wrap that up.
Yeah, just sort of a little, hey, how you doing? And then she was gone. I was thinking, for people who listen to this podcast, perhaps you're listening to this podcast and you're saying, hey, I have a theory about the shakes that were made. Don made a chocolate shake, but I have a theory about it. Instead of, let's say, he could have been making a strawberry banana shake. And you're listening and you're saying, I want to let these people know about my thought. But you can't. But actually you can. So, in an effort to encourage listener interaction, you can email us at thepartnersmeeting@gmail.com, or you can tweet us using the handle @partnersmeeting on Twitter. My friend Elliot listened to last week's episode, and he writes, why do we expect Don to ever change? It's like Tony Soprano. We like him and want him to be better, but how often does any middle-aged person change without hitting rock bottom? Don's not changing. We've seen him hit the bottom several times, and he only shows glimmers. What do you guys think of that?
Maybe if he hits the rock bottom again, I think it'll just end, and he'll just do the normal thing, or he really just hit the bottom, and that's it. I think that'll be the vagueness of it, probably.
I think it's like you find, how people can improve so much, and especially in a show like this, you see the characters' flaws so easily that, even if it's not ever possible, you still hope for it. It's like, that's what you still want, ideally, for him to be a better human in general.
It kind of reminds me of the quote that the Joker says in The Dark Knight of what happens when an unstoppable force meets an immovable object. And I feel like you look at all the other characters, and there's been a lot of development. And I think that was something frustrating about The Sopranos, is that Tony Soprano, you're just like, man, you're just the same guy, 6 seasons, and you're just still kind of an ass. But with Don, like Katie said, you hope that he'll develop, because look at time's moving. Things are changing, and you really keep making the same mistakes. And that's why I think, again, I kind of want to see them turn him into nothing, because what has he done to adapt? If you've ever read The Prince by Machiavelli, he says that there are two types of rulers. There are conservative rulers and there are aggressive rulers. And there's not one that's better or worse. There's plenty of successful conservative and plenty of successful aggressive. But when the shit hits the fan, the aggressive ruler is going to be the only one that knows how to adapt. And Don
Although,
hasn't
to be
adapted.
fair, that was written before the Tea Party came into being.
That's
So
true.
that didn't, account for all the effect that those guys would have.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Pete's car real quick. Man, his windshields were dirty.
but hold on though. Where were they though? They were like out in the woods on what I'm assuming was not a paved road.
I mean, it's like you clearly see the lines, the dirt lines around and whatever. I mean, they were at a golf course. Maybe golf courses were on dirt roads at that time. And they didn't really go to a fancy one.
Well, because there's probably not a golf course in New York City. Where would it be? It has to be huge.
It's true. His car just looked kind of more dumpy than I remember.
Upstate, maybe? And Pete is a pretty shitty driver. So, I mean, he probably couldn't even maneuver his way through a car wash, let
As
alone...
stated by Don. What was he saying? Like, what was Pete's comment to Don? And then Don...
I think it was, why are you smoking in my car?
Oh, yeah.
It helps distract me from your shitty driving.
Yeah, basically.
When he said that, I then looked through the car into the background to see if Pete was swerving. I was like, he looks like he's driving straight.
Maybe they had like some kind of weird thing happen earlier. Well, who knows? We never saw it. It was just a lot of assumptions.
Well, we'll have more things to discuss next week. That's it for this week's episode of The Partners Meeting. On behalf of Joseph, Sean, and Katie, I'm Aaron Harting saying thanks for listening, but you should go.
It's my house.